Marcus Thompson stood at the big iron gates of Westfield Academy. His hands shook a little as he looked up at the tall brick buildings. Everything looked so clean and perfect. The grass was cut just right. The windows sparkled in the morning sun. Even the walkways looked like someone had scrubbed them with a toothbrush. He took a deep breath and walked through the gates. His old sneakers made squeaky sounds on the shiny floor. The sound echoed in the long hallway. Marcus tried to walk. Softer, but the squeaking continued. Other students turned to look at him. Their eyes moved from his worn-out shoes to his simple clothes. Then they looked away and whispered to each other. Marcus had been in foster care since he was 8 years old. He had lived in 12 different homes. Some were okay. Some were not so good. But in every home, he found a way to play music. Sometimes it was an old piano in a church. Sometimes it was a keyboard at school. Music was the one thing that never left him. 3 months ago, everything changed. Marcus had played piano at a school talent show. A teacher recorded it on her phone. She sent the video to her friend who worked at Westfield Academy. That friend showed it to the music department. 2 weeks later, Marcus got a letter. Westfield Academy wanted to give him a full scholarship. Mrs. Rodriguez, his social worker, could not believe it. "Marcus, do you know what this means?" she had said. "Westfield Academy is one of the best schools in the state. Rich kids go there. Kids whose parents are doctors and lawyers and business owners." Marcus knew it was a big deal. But he also knew he was different from those kids. He had no fancy clothes. He had no money. He only had his music and his dream to study at a real music school someday. Now he was here, walking through halls that smelled like expensive cleaning products. The walls were covered with pictures of famous people who had gone to this school. Lawyers, doctors, politicians, and business leaders smiled down at him. Marcus wondered if any of them had been foster kids. He doubted it. "You must be Marcus Thompson," a voice made him turn around. A woman with short gray hair and kind eyes walked toward him. She wore a blue dress and carried a folder. "I am Mrs. Patterson, the student coordinator. Welcome to Westfield Academy." "Thank you," Marcus said. His voice sounded small in the big hallway. "Let me show you around," Mrs. Patterson said. She began walking, and Marcus followed. "This is the main building. It was built in 1892. We have about 400 students here. Most of them have been with us since kindergarten." They walked past classrooms with large windows. Marcus could see students sitting at wooden desks. The teachers wore nice clothes and spoke in calm voices. Everything looked so different from his old public school. There, the desks were plastic and the walls had cracks. Here, even the chalkboards looked expensive. "The students here work very hard," Mrs. Patterson continued. "We expect a lot from everyone, but I think you will do well. Your music teacher from your old school spoke very highly of you." Marcus nodded. Mr. Garcia had been the best teacher he ever had. Mr. Garcia stayed after school to help Marcus practice. He let Marcus use the school piano even on weekends. When Marcus told him about Westfield Academy, Mr. Garcia had tears in his eyes. "You deserve this chance, Marcus," Mr. Garcia had said. "You have more talent in your little finger than most people have in their whole body. Do not let anyone make you feel like you do not belong there." But as Marcus walked through Westfield Academy, he felt like he stuck out like a sore thumb. The other students looked so confident. They walked with their backs straight and their chins up. They talked about ski trips and summer houses. Marcus had never been skiing. He had never even seen the ocean. "This is the dining hall," Mrs. Patterson said, opening a door. The room was huge with long wooden tables and high ceilings. Students sat in groups, eating food that looked like it came from a fancy restaurant. Marcus thought about the free lunch he used to get at his old school. It was usually a sandwich and some fruit. This looked like a 5-star hotel. A group of students at a nearby table stopped talking when they saw Marcus. One girl with blonde hair and expensive-looking clothes stared at him for a long moment. Then she leaned over and whispered something to her friends. They all looked at Marcus and giggled. Marcus felt his face get hot. He knew they were talking about him. He could guess what they were saying. The scholarship kid? The foster kid? The one who did not belong. Do not worry about them, Mrs. Patterson said quietly. She had noticed the staring too. Some of our students take time to warm up to new people, but you will make friends. I am sure of it. Marcus was not so sure. He had been the new kid many times before. It was never easy. But this felt different. This felt harder. At his old schools, most kids were like him. They did not have much money. Their parents worked regular jobs. Here, he felt like he was from a different planet. They continued the tour. Mrs. Patterson showed him the library, which was bigger than most of the houses he had lived in. She showed him the computer lab, where every student had their own laptop. She showed him the gym, which had equipment that looked brand new. And now, Mrs. Patterson said with a smile, let me show you the best part. They walked down another hallway. This one was quieter than the others. At the end of the hall, Mrs. Patterson opened a door. Marcus gasped. It was the music room. But it was not like any music room he had ever seen. The ceiling was high, with windows that let in lots of light. There were music stands and chairs set up for an orchestra. Along the walls were cases full of instruments. Violins, flutes, trumpets, and more, but in the center of the room sat the most beautiful piano Marcus had ever seen. It was black and shiny, like a mirror. The bench was covered in soft leather. Even from across the room, Marcus could tell it was special. That is our Steinway grand piano, Mrs. Patterson said. It is worth more than most people's cars. Would you like to try it? Marcus walked toward the piano like he was in a dream. His fingers reached out to touch the keys. They felt smooth and perfect under his hands. He pressed one key, then another. The sound was pure and rich. It filled the whole room. Without thinking, Marcus began to play. It was a piece by Chopin that he had learned by heart. His fingers moved across the keys like they had a mind of their own. The music flowed out of the piano and wrapped around the room like a warm blanket. When he finished, Marcus looked up. Mrs. Patterson was smiling, but she had tears in her eyes. A few other people had come into the room while he was playing. A teacher in a suit stood by the door, nodding his head. 2 students peeked in from the hallway. That was beautiful, Marcus, Mrs. Patterson said. I think you are going to do just fine here. For the first time since walking through those iron gates, Marcus smiled. Maybe he was different from the other students. Maybe he did not have fancy clothes or rich parents. But when he sat at that piano, none of that mattered. The music was the same. The feeling was the same. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Marcus could not sleep that first night. He lay in his small bed at the group home and thought about the beautiful piano. He had played many pianos before, but nothing like that Steinway. It felt like the piano was alive. When he pressed the keys, the piano seemed to understand what he wanted to say. The next morning, Marcus woke up early. He ate a quick breakfast of cereal and toast. Then he took the bus to Westfield Academy. The other students on the bus looked at him with curious eyes. He was the only one wearing clothes from a thrift store. But Marcus did not care. He was thinking about the music room. His first class was English. The teacher, Mr. Williams, seemed nice enough, but Marcus had trouble paying attention. He kept thinking about the piano. During math class, he drew music notes in the margins of his notebook. In history class, he tapped rhythms on his desk with his pencil. Finally, lunchtime came. Most students went to the dining hall. Marcus had brought a sandwich from home. He ate it quickly, then headed straight to the music room. He hoped it would be empty. The music room was quiet when Marcus opened the door. Sunlight came through the big windows and made patterns on the floor. The Steinway piano sat in the center of the room like a beautiful black jewel. Marcus walked over to it slowly. He sat down on the leather bench and lifted the lid that covered the keys. He started with scales. Up and down, up and down. His fingers remembered the patterns from years of practice. Then he played some exercises that Mr. Garcia had taught him. The sound filled the room with clear, bright notes. After warming up, Marcus began to play a piece by Bach. It was one of his favorites. The music was like a conversation between his left hand and his right hand. Sometimes they played together. Sometimes they played against each other, but they always found a way to work together in the end. That was lovely. Marcus jumped and turned around. A woman stood in the doorway. She was Asian, maybe 40 years old, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. She wore a long skirt and carried a cup of coffee. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, standing up quickly. "I did not know if I was allowed to. Please sit back down," the woman said. "I am Mrs. Chun, the music teacher here. And you must be Marcus Thompson, our new scholarship student." Marcus nodded and sat back down on the bench. "Please, keep playing," Mrs. Chun said. "I was enjoying it very much." Marcus looked at her for a moment, then turned back to the piano. He started playing again, but this time he chose something different. It was a piece by Chopin that always made him feel peaceful. The melody was sad but beautiful, like rain on a sunny day. Mrs. Chun walked closer and listened. When Marcus finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "How long have you been playing?" she asked. "Since I was 8, Marcus said. That was when I went into foster care. There was an old piano at the first home where I lived. It was out of tune and missing some keys, but I loved the sound it made." "Who taught you?" "Different people," Marcus said. "Some foster parents knew a little bit. I had music class at school, but mostly I taught myself. I listened to music on the radio and tried to copy what I heard." Mrs. Chen sat down in a chair near the piano. "That is remarkable. Most of our students here have had private lessons since they were very young. They have expensive teachers and practice many hours every day. But I can tell you have something special. You have feeling in your music." Marcus did not know what to say. No teacher had ever told him that before. "Would you like to play something else?" Mrs. Chun asked. Marcus thought for a moment. Then he began to play a song that he had made up himself. He had never written it down. It lived only in his fingers and his heart. The music told the story of his life, the sad parts and the happy parts, the times when he felt alone and the times when he felt hopeful. When he finished, Mrs. Chun had tears in her eyes. "That was your own composition?" she asked. Marcus nodded. "It is beautiful," she said. "You have real talent, Marcus, raw talent that needs to be shaped and guided. But the foundation is already there." Just then, the door opened. 3 students walked in. Marcus recognized them from the dining hall. One was the blonde girl who had stared at him the day before. Her name was Victoria, he had learned. Her father owned several companies and had given a lot of money to the school. "Oh," Victoria said when she saw Marcus at the piano. "I did not know the scholarship boy was using our practice time." "This is not your practice time, Victoria," Mrs. Chun said firmly. "The music room is open to all students during lunch." Victoria's 2 friends giggled behind her. One of them, a boy with dark hair and expensive glasses, looked Marcus up and down. "I hope he cleaned his hands before touching that piano," the boy said. "That Steinway is worth more than some people make in a year." Marcus felt his face get hot. He started to stand up, but Mrs. Chun put a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Actually," Mrs. Chen said, "Marcus was just showing me his technique. His touch is quite refined. Victoria, perhaps you could learn something from watching him." Victoria's face turned red. She was not used to being corrected, especially not in front of other students. "I have been playing piano since I was 4, Victoria said. "I have had the best teachers money can buy. I hardly need lessons from someone like him." "Someone like me?" Marcus said quietly. He had heard those words before in different places from different people, but they always hurt the same way. "You know what I mean," Victoria said. "Someone who does not belong here." The room went very quiet. Even Victoria's friends looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Chun stood up. Her voice was calm but strong. "Every student at this school belongs here, Victoria. Marcus earned his place just like everyone else. Perhaps more so because he had to work harder to get here." Victoria opened her mouth to say something else, but Mrs. Chun continued. "Furthermore, talent is not something you can buy. It is something you are born with. And some people, like Marcus, have to work twice as hard to develop that talent because they do not have all the advantages that others have. Victoria's face was very red now. She turned and walked toward the door. Her friends followed her. "This is not over," Victoria said as she left. When they were gone, Mrs. Chun sat back down. Marcus was staring at his hands on the piano keys. "Do not let them get to you," Mrs. Chun said. "I have been teaching here for 15 years. I have seen many students come and go. Some have all the money in the world but no soul in their music. Others, like you, have soul but not much else. Can you guess which ones go on to have real careers in music?" Marcus looked up at her. "The ones with soul," Mrs. Chun continued, "because you can teach technique. You can teach theory, but you cannot teach feeling. You either have it or you do not, and Marcus, you have it." Marcus felt something warm spread through his chest. It was hope, maybe. Or maybe it was just the feeling of having someone believe in him. "Thank you, Mrs. Chun," he said. "No need to thank me. Just keep playing. And Marcus?" She stood up to leave. "You can use this room whenever you want. I will make sure you have access." After she left, Marcus sat alone with the piano. He played softly, thinking about what Mrs. Chun had said. Maybe Victoria was right that he did not belong here. But maybe belonging was not about money or fancy clothes. Maybe belonging was about having something to offer. And music was what Marcus had to offer. He played until the bell rang for the next class. Then he closed the piano lid gently and whispered, "Thank you." The piano seemed to whisper back, "Any time." 3 weeks had passed since Marcus started at Westfield Academy. He had found a routine that worked for him. Wake up early, take the bus to school, go to classes. Eat lunch in the music room while practicing piano, go to more classes, then practice. Piano again until the janitor had to lock up the building. Marcus was getting better at ignoring the stares and whispers. Some students had started to accept him, or at least they stopped being mean to him. A few even said hello in the hallways. But Victoria and her friends still made comments when they thought he could not hear them. "The charity case is back at the piano," Victoria would say. Or, "I wonder how long before he realizes he does not fit in here." Marcus tried not to listen, but the words still stung. On this particular Friday morning, all students had to go to the assembly hall. Marcus sat in the back row as usual. The hall was huge, with red velvet seats and a stage that looked like something from a fancy theater. Principal Morrison walked onto the stage. He was a tall man with gray hair and a serious face. "Good morning, students," Principal Morrison said. His voice echoed through the hall. "I have an exciting announcement to make." The students got quiet. Even Victoria stopped whispering to her friends. "As many of you know, Westfield Academy has a long tradition of excellence in music," Principal Morrison continued. "For 50 years we have held our annual piano competition. This year marks our 50th anniversary, making this competition more special than ever." Marcus felt his heart start to beat faster. A piano competition. He had never been in a real competition before. "The winner of this year's competition will receive several prizes," Principal Morrison said. "First, a trophy that will be displayed in our trophy case. Second, their name will be added to the plaque of champions in the music room. And third, most importantly, a full scholarship to any music conservatory of their choice." The hall erupted. In excited whispers, Marcus could barely breathe. A scholarship to a music conservatory, that was his dream. He had always wanted to study music at a real music school, but he knew it was impossible. Those schools cost more money than he would ever have. But now, maybe, there was a chance. "The competition will be held in 4 weeks, Principal Morrison continued. "Any student may enter. You will perform one piece of your choice, no longer. Then 10 minutes. A panel of judges from the State Music Board will decide the winner." Marcus closed his eyes and imagined himself on that stage, playing the beautiful Steinway piano. He could almost hear the music filling the hall. When he opened his eyes, he saw Mrs. Chun looking at him from across the hall. She gave him a small nod and a smile after the assembly. Students poured out of the hall, talking excitedly about the competition. Marcus heard Victoria's voice above the others. "Of course I am going to win. Victoria was saying to her friends. I have been preparing for this my whole life. My private teacher says I am ready for Carnegie Hall. What piece will you play? Asked her friend Sarah. Rachmaninoff Piano Concerto No. 2, Victoria said proudly. It is one of the hardest pieces ever written. No one else in this school can play it. Marcus had heard of that piece. It was very difficult. He had tried to play parts of it before, but it required more skill than he had. Victoria was probably right that she was the only student who could play it well. I heard that new kid might enter, said James, Victoria's other friend. Victoria laughed, but it was not a nice laugh. Marcus? Please. He might be able to play. Simple songs, but this is a real competition. This requires years of proper training, not just fooling around on an old piano. Marcus felt his face get hot. He wanted to say something, but he did not know what. Instead, he walked away quickly and headed for the music room. Mrs. Chen was already there when he arrived. She was organizing sheet music on her desk. I saw your face during the assembly, she said without looking up. You want to enter the competition. It was not a question, so Marcus just nodded. Good, Mrs. Chen said. You should enter. You have as much right as anyone else. But Victoria's right, Marcus said. I do not have proper training. I cannot play pieces like Rachmaninoff. Mrs. Chen stopped organizing and looked at him. Marcus, let me tell you something about competitions. They are not about playing the hardest piece. They are about playing with feeling and skill. A simple piece played with heart will always beat a hard piece played without soul. What should I play? Marcus asked. Mrs. Chen thought for a moment. What piece means the most to you? What piece tells your story? Marcus knew the answer immediately. Chopin Ballade No. 1 in G minor. Double quotes. Mrs. Chen smiled. That is a perfect choice. It is beautiful, it is challenging enough to show your skill, and it has the kind of emotion that judges love. But more importantly, I have heard you play it. You play it like you understand every note. Do you really think I have a chance? Marcus asked. I think you have more than a chance, Mrs. Chen said. But you will need to practice harder than you have ever practiced before. Victoria has been preparing for this her whole life. You have 4 weeks, Marcus nodded. 4 weeks. Was not very long, but he would make it work. He had to, over the next few days, word spread through the school about who was entering the competition. Besides Victoria, there were 8 other students. Most of them came from wealthy families and had been taking private lessons for years. Marcus was the only scholarship student entering. The reactions from other students were mixed. Some seemed excited to see what Marcus could do. Others, especially Victoria's friends, made jokes about him embarrassing himself. Marcus tried not to listen, but it was hard. I heard he is playing Chopin, Sarah said one day in the hallway. How cute. Victoria is playing Rachmaninoff, and he is playing nursery rhymes. Someone should tell him this is not a talent show at a public school, James added. This is serious music. Marcus walked faster and tried to ignore them. But their words stayed in his head. Maybe they were right. Maybe he was in over his head. That afternoon, Marcus went to the music room as usual. But when he got there, he found Victoria at the piano. She was playing the Rachmaninoff piece she had mentioned. Her fingers flew across the keys with perfect technique. The music was fast and complicated and very impressive. When she finished, Victoria looked up and saw Marcus standing in the doorway. Oh, it is you, she said. I suppose you want to use the piano now. I can wait, Marcus said quietly. Victoria stood up and gathered her sheet music. You know, Marcus, I almost feel sorry for you. You do not realize what you are getting yourself into. This competition is not for amateurs. I am not an amateur, Marcus said, surprising himself with how strong his voice sounded. Victoria laughed. Really? How many competitions have you won? How many years of training do you have? What conservatory did your teacher graduate from? Marcus could not answer any of those questions, and Victoria knew it. That is what I thought, Victoria said. Look, I am not trying to be mean. I am just trying to save you from embarrassing yourself. There will be important people in the audience. Music teachers from colleges, parents who donate money to the school, Maybe even people from the newspaper. Do you really want them to see you fail? Marcus looked at the piano, then back at Victoria. I am entering the competition, he said. Victoria shrugged. Your choice. But do not say I did not warn you. After she left, Marcus sat down at the piano. His hands were shaking a little. Victoria's words echoed in his head. Maybe she was right. Maybe he was just setting himself up to fail, but then he remembered what Mrs. Chun had said. This was not about playing the hardest piece. It was about playing with feeling. And Marcus had plenty of feeling. He began to play the Chopin Ballade. The music started soft and gentle, like a whisper. Then it grew stronger and more passionate. The melody told a story of struggle and hope, of sadness and joy. It was the story of Marcus's life. As he played, Marcus felt his confidence return. Victoria might have better technique. She might have years of expensive lessons. But she had never lived in 12 different foster homes. She had never had to fight for everything she had. She had never had to find hope in the darkest places. Music was Marcus's language. It was how he spoke to the world. And in 4 weeks, he would have a chance to show everyone what he had to say. The competition would not be easy. Marcus knew that. But for the first time since the announcement, he truly believed he could win. Not because he was the best technical player, but because he had something that could not be taught or bought. He had heart. And sometimes that was enough. The days leading up to the competition flew by like pages in a book. Marcus practiced every free moment he had. He came to school early and stayed late. His fingers were getting stronger, and his timing was getting better. Mrs. Chun worked with him after classes, helping him with the difficult parts of the Chopin piece. Remember, she would say, the music must breathe. Do not rush through the fast parts. Let each note have its moment. Marcus listened carefully to everything she taught him. He practiced the same passages over and over until they felt natural. Slowly he could feel himself improving. The piece was becoming part of him, but as the competition got closer, Marcus noticed things changing around the school. Other students whispered more when he walked by. Some teachers looked at him with worried faces. Even Mrs. Patterson, who had been so kind on his first day, seemed nervous when she talked to him. 1 week before the competition, Marcus arrived at school to find a crowd of students gathered near the main office. They were reading something on the bulletin board. Marcus walked over to see what was so interesting. It was a newspaper article about the competition. The headline read, Westfield Academy Piano Competition to feature guest judges from State Music Board. Below that was a picture of the school and a list of the students competing. Marcus found his name at the bottom of the list. Next to it, someone had written, Marcus Thompson, scholarship student. All the other names just had their grade levels listed. I wonder why they had to mention that you are a scholarship student, said a voice behind him. Marcus turned around. It was David Chun, Mrs. Chun's nephew. David was a quiet boy who played violin in the school orchestra. He was one of the few students who had been nice to Marcus from the beginning. Maybe they think it makes the story more interesting, Marcus said, trying not to sound upset. Or maybe someone wanted to make sure people knew you were different, David said. His voice was quiet, but Marcus could hear the anger in it that afternoon. Marcus went to the music room for his usual practice time. But when he opened the door, he stopped in shock. The beautiful Steinway piano was gone. In its place sat an old upright piano that Marcus had never seen before. The piano was much smaller than the Steinway. Its black paint was scratched and faded. Some of the white keys were yellow with age. Marcus walked over to it slowly and pressed one of the keys. The sound was flat and dull, nothing like the rich tone of the Steinway. Marcus, there you are. Mrs. Chen came into the room behind him. Her face looked worried and sad. Where is the Steinway? Marcus asked. Mrs. Chun sighed. It has been moved to the auditorium for the competition. The administration said this piano will be used for practice from now on. Marcus pressed a few more keys. Several of them stuck when he pushed them down. Others made no sound at all. The pedals felt loose and wobbly under his feet. But this piano is broken, Marcus said. I know, Mrs. Chun said quietly. I complained to Principal Morrison, but he said budget cuts require us to use older equipment for daily practice. The Steinway is too valuable to risk damage from everyday use. Marcus sat down on the piano bench. It was hard and uncomfortable, nothing like the soft leather bench that went with the Steinway. He tried to play the opening of his Chopin piece, but it sounded terrible. The keys that stuck made the rhythm all wrong. The keys that did not work at all created gaps in the melody. How am I supposed to practice on this? Marcus asked. Mrs. Chun sat down in a chair next to him. I wish I had an answer. I tried to argue with the administration, but they would not listen. They said all students must use the same practice facilities. But Victoria and the other students have pianos at home, Marcus said. They do not need to practice here. No, Mrs. Chun said. It does not seem fair. Marcus felt anger building up inside him. This was not about budget cuts or protecting the Steinway. This was about making sure he could not compete fairly. Someone wanted him to fail. Who made this decision? Marcus asked. Mrs. Chun hesitated. The school board. But the recommendation came from the Parents' Association. Marcus did not need to ask who was on the Parents' Association. He knew Victoria's mother was the president. He knew that most of the other competing students had parents on the committee. So what do I do now? Marcus asked. Mrs. Chun was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, You adapt. You find a way to make this piano work for you. Great musicians can play on any instrument. Marcus looked at the broken piano. But the competition is in 1 week? How can I learn to play on a completely different piano in 1 week? The same way you learned to play in the first place, Mrs. Chun said, with determination and hard work. And Marcus, remember this, if you can make beautiful music on this piano, imagine what you can do on a good one. After Mrs. Chun left, Marcus sat alone with the old piano. He felt like crying, but he was too angry to cry. Instead, he started to play. The music sounded awful, but he kept going. He played the same passage 10 times, 20 times, trying to figure out which keys worked and which ones did not. He learned to press some keys harder than others. He learned to avoid the keys that stuck. He learned to adjust his timing to work around the problems. It was like learning to speak a new language. Every piano had its own personality, its own way of responding to touch. This piano was cranky and difficult, but it was still a piano. It could still make music if Marcus was patient enough to figure out how. The next day, Marcus arrived at school even earlier than usual. He wanted as much practice time as possible. But when he got to the music room, he found someone already there. It was Miguel, the janitor. He was an older man from Mexico who spoke English with a thick accent. Marcus had seen him around the school but had never talked to him much. Buenos dias, Marcus, Miguel said with a smile. You are here early today. I need to practice, Marcus said. The competition is soon? Miguel nodded toward the old piano. This piano, it is not so good, verdad? No, Marcus said. It is terrible. Miguel walked over to the piano and pressed a few keys. My grandmother, she had a piano like this when I was a boy in Guadalajara. Old, broken, but still a piano. You know what she used to tell me? Marcus shook his head. She said, Mio, music does not come from the piano. Music comes from the heart. The piano is just how the heart speaks to the world. Miguel pressed one of the broken keys again. Maybe this piano cannot speak very well. But if your heart has something important to say, people will listen anyway. Marcus thought about Miguel's words as he practiced that day. Maybe the piano was broken, but his heart was not broken. His heart had plenty to say. That evening, Marcus stayed later than usual. The school was almost empty when Miguel came to clean the music room. Still here, eh? Miguel said. You work very hard. I have to, Marcus said. Everyone else has advantages that I do not have. This is my only chance. Miguel stopped mopping and looked at Marcus. Can I tell you something? I have been working at this school for 8 years. I have heard many students play piano. Some are very good technically. They play all the right notes at the right time. But they sound like robots, no feeling. Miguel sat down in one of the chairs. But when you play, even on this broken piano, I stop what I'm doing to listen. Because you play like the music matters, like it is part of your soul. But what if that is not enough? Marcus asked. What if the judges only care about technical skill? Then they are not very good judges, Miguel said with a smile. But I think you will surprise yourself, and you will surprise them too. Over. The next few days, Marcus practiced harder than he had ever practiced in his life. He learned every quirk of the old piano. He memorized which keys stuck and for how long. He figured out how to make the weak keys sound stronger and how to make the loud keys sound softer. It was not easy. Some days he felt frustrated and wanted to give up, but every time he thought about quitting, he remembered why he was doing this. This competition was his chance to prove that he belonged at Westfield Academy. More than that, it was his chance to win a scholarship to music school. 3 days before the competition, Marcus overheard a conversation that made his blood run cold. He was walking past the principal's office when he heard voices through the open door. Are you sure this is wise? Principal Morrison was saying. If anyone finds out that we deliberately sabotaged the practice piano... No one will find out? Said a woman's voice that Marcus recognized as Mrs. Blackwood, Victoria's mother. And we are not sabotaging anything. We are simply ensuring that all students have equal access to practice facilities. But the boy has been practicing on a broken piano for a week, Principal Morrison said. That is unfortunate, Mrs. Blackwood said. But surely you understand that this competition reflects on the entire school. We cannot have our reputation damaged by an unprepared performer. Marcus felt sick to his stomach. They had broken the piano on purpose. They wanted him to fail, but instead of discouraging him, the conversation made Marcus more determined than ever. They thought they could stop him with a broken piano. They thought they could intimidate him into giving up. They were wrong. Marcus walked to the music room with his head held high. He sat down at the old piano and began to play. The music that came out was not perfect, but it was real. It was honest. It was his. In 3 days he would show them what he could do. Broken piano or not, he was ready. The night before the competition, Marcus could not sleep. He lay in his bed at the group home, staring at the ceiling. His mind kept going over every note of the Chopin piece. He had practiced it so many times on the broken piano that he could play it with his eyes closed, but tomorrow he would have to play on the Steinway again. He had not touched that beautiful piano in over a week. What if his fingers had gotten used to the broken keys? What if he could not adjust back to a proper piano? Marcus got up and looked out his window. The moon was bright and full. Somewhere across town, Victoria was probably sleeping peacefully in her big house, confident that tomorrow would bring her an easy victory. She had no idea what Marcus had been through to get ready for this competition. The next morning, Marcus woke up before his alarm clock rang. He got dressed carefully in his best clothes. They were not expensive, but they were clean and neat. Mrs. Rodriguez had helped him pick them out at a thrift store. She said he looked very handsome and professional. Remember, Marcus, Mrs. Rodriguez had said, you earned your place in this competition. Do not let anyone make you feel like you do not deserve to be there. Marcus ate a small breakfast, but his stomach was too nervous to hold much food. He caught the bus to school earlier than usual. The building looked different somehow, more important. Today was the day that would change everything. The competition was scheduled for 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That gave Marcus time for one last practice session. He went straight to the music room, hoping to spend some quiet time with the old piano before the real performance. But when he opened the door, he found Mrs. Chun waiting for him. She looked worried and excited at the same time. Marcus, I've been thinking about today, she said. I want you to remember something very important. No matter what happens, you have already won something valuable. What do you mean? Marcus asked. You have proven to yourself that you can compete with anyone, Mrs. Chun said. A month ago, you were just a new student trying to fit in. Now you are a serious musician preparing for a real competition. That change happened because of your hard work and determination. Marcus sat down at the old piano. His fingers found the keys automatically and began playing a gentle warm-up exercise. "Mrs. Chun," he said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you really think I can win today?" Mrs. Chun was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I think you have the talent to win. I think you have the heart to win, but competitions are unpredictable. Sometimes the best performer does not win because of politics or prejudice or just plain bad luck." "So you do not think I will win?" Marcus said sadly. "I did not say that," Mrs. Chun said quickly. "What I'm saying is that winning is not the only way to succeed. If you go out there and play your best, if you show those judges what you are capable of, then you have already accomplished something amazing." Marcus nodded, but he still felt nervous. He wanted to win more than anything he had ever wanted in his life. "There is something else I want to tell you," Mrs. Chun said. "Yesterday, I spoke with the judges who will be evaluating the competition. I wanted to make sure they understood the format and rules." "What did they say?" "They were very interested to hear about you. When I told them about your background and how hard you have worked, they seemed impressed. One of them said that the most memorable performances often come from students who have overcome challenges." This made Marcus feel a little better. Maybe the judges would appreciate his story, not just his playing. "Now," Mrs. Chun said, "I want you to practice one more time. But do not worry about the broken keys or the stuck pedals. Just play the music and feel the emotion. That is what the judges need to hear." Marcus began playing the Chopin Ballade from the beginning. As always, some keys stuck and some made no sound. But Marcus had learned to work around these problems. He pressed harder when he needed to, softer when the keys were too sensitive. He adjusted his timing to make up for the delays. As he played, something wonderful happened. The music began to sound beautiful despite the piano's problems. Marcus realized that all his practice on this difficult instrument had made him a better player. He had learned to listen more carefully, to control his touch more precisely, to feel the music more deeply. "That was magnificent," Mrs. Chun said when he finished. "I have never heard you play with such control and expression." Marcus looked at his hands on the yellowed keys. "This piano taught me things that the Steinway could not teach me." "What do you mean?" "The Steinway is so perfect that it makes everything sound good," Marcus said. "But this piano only sounds good if you really know what you are doing." "It forced me to become a better musician," Mrs. Chun smiled. "That is a very wise observation. Perhaps the people who arranged for you to practice on this piano did you a favor without realizing it." Just then Miguel appeared in the doorway with his cleaning cart. "Buenos dias," he said cheerfully. "Today is the big day, no?" "Yes," Marcus said. "I am scared and excited at the same time." Miguel came into the room and sat down in one of the chairs. "Can I tell you a story about my grandmother?" Marcus and Mrs. Chun both nodded. "When she was a young woman, she wanted to be a professional singer," Miguel began. "She had a beautiful voice like an angel. But she was poor and she did not have money for voice lessons or fancy clothes." Miguel paused and looked at the old piano. "One day there was a singing contest in the town square. The prize was enough money to go to music school in Mexico City. My grandmother wanted to enter, but she was afraid. All the other singers had been trained by expensive teachers." "What did she do?" Marcus asked. "At first, she almost did not enter. But then she remembered why she loved to sing. It was not about being better than other people. It was about sharing the music in her heart with the world." Miguel smiled at the memory. "So she entered the contest. She wore her only good dress and sang a simple song that her mother had taught her. The other singers performed complicated arias and opera pieces. But when my grandmother sang, the whole crowd went silent. Even the birds stopped chirping to listen." "Did she win?" Mrs. Chun asked. "She did not just win," Miguel said. "The judges said it was the most beautiful singing they had ever heard. She got the money for music school and became a famous singer throughout Mexico." Miguel stood up and put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. "The lesson, Mio, is that the music in your heart is more powerful than any advantage other people might have. Do not try to be like Victoria or the other students. Be like yourself, but the very best version of Yourself, after Miguel left, Marcus continued practicing, but now he felt different, calmer, more confident. He was not trying to compete with Victoria on her terms anymore. He was going to compete on his own terms. At lunchtime, Marcus did not eat much. His stomach was too full of butterflies. Instead, he went for a walk around the school grounds. The fresh air helped clear his mind. When he came back inside, he saw other competitors preparing in different rooms. Victoria was in the library reviewing her sheet music with intense concentration. Other students were doing breathing exercises or vocal warm dash-ups. Marcus went back to the music room for one final practice session. This time, he did not worry about technical perfection. He just played the music and let himself feel every emotion in the piece. The sadness, the hope, the struggle, the triumph. It was all there in Chopin's beautiful melody. As he played, Marcus realized something important. This piece was not just music to him. It was his autobiography written in notes and rhythms. Every phrase told part of his story. The difficult passages represented the hard times in his life. The beautiful melodies represented the moments of joy and hope. When he finished playing, Marcus felt ready. Not just ready to perform, but ready to share his story with the world. Win or lose, he was going to give everything he had. The clock on the wall showed 1:30. In 30 minutes, the competition would begin. Marcus closed the piano lid gently and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me so much." Then he walked toward the auditorium, ready to face whatever came next. His heart was beating fast, but it was beating with excitement now, not fear. He had worked harder for this moment than for anything else in his life. It was time to show the world what Marcus Thompson could do. The auditorium was buzzing with excitement when Marcus walked in. He had never seen it so full of people. Parents in expensive suits and dresses filled the red velvet seats. Teachers sat in the front rows, whispering to each other and checking their programs. Even some students who were not competing had come to watch. Marcus looked around for a familiar face and spotted Mrs. Rodriguez sitting near the back. She waved at him and gave him a thumbs up. Miguel was there too, wearing his best shirt instead of his janitor uniform. Mrs. Chun sat with the other teachers, but she caught Marcus's eye and nodded encouragingly. The stage looked magnificent. Red curtains hung from the ceiling and bright lights made everything sparkle. In the center of the stage sat the beautiful Steinway piano that Marcus had not touched in over a week. It looked even more impressive under the stage lights. "Attention, competitors," said a woman with a clipboard. "Please gather backstage for final instructions." Marcus followed the other students behind the curtains. Victoria was there, looking calm and confident in an elegant blue dress. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, and she wore small diamond earrings that probably cost more than Marcus's entire wardrobe. The other competitors looked equally polished. They chatted easily with each other about summer music camps and private teachers. Marcus felt out of place in his simple dark suit from the thrift store, but he tried to ignore that feeling. "Welcome, students," said Principal Morrison, joining them backstage. "This is a very special day for our school. We have 3 distinguished judges from the State Music Board who will be evaluating your performances." He gestured to 3 adults standing nearby. There was an older woman with silver hair, a middle-aged man with glasses, and a younger woman with short brown hair. They all looked very serious and professional. "You will perform in alphabetical order by last name," Principal Morrison continued. "Miss Adams will go first, followed by Miss Blackwood, then Mr. Chun, and so on. Mr. Thompson, you will perform last." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Going last meant waiting through everyone else's performance. It also meant the judges would be tired by the time they heard him play. "Each performance will be limited to 10 minutes, Principal Morrison said. "A timekeeper will signal when you have 30 seconds remaining. Are there any questions?" Number 1 raised their hand. "Very well. Miss Adams, please prepare. The competition will begin in 5 minutes." The first competitor was Sarah Adams, one of Victoria's friends. She was playing a piece by Mozart that sounded very precise and clean. Marcus could hear her performance from backstage, and it was technically perfect. Every note was exactly right. Every rhythm was precise. But somehow it sounded cold to Marcus, like a computer playing music instead of a human being. Next came Victoria. She walked onto the stage with complete confidence, her head held high. She sat at the Steinway, adjusted the bench, and began playing her Rachmaninoff concerto. Marcus had to admit that Victoria was an excellent pianist. Her fingers flew across the keys with incredible speed and accuracy. The music was complex and impressive, full of dramatic flourishes and powerful chords. The audience was clearly amazed by the technical difficulty of what she was playing, but as Marcus listened, he noticed something. Victoria was playing the notes perfectly, but she was not playing the music. She was showing off her technical skills rather than expressing emotion. It was like watching a circus performer doing tricks instead of an artist creating art. When Victoria finished, the audience erupted in applause. She stood up and took a deep bow, smiling confidently. As she walked off stage, she passed Marcus in the wings. "Good luck," she said, but her tone suggested she did not think he would need it because he had no chance of winning. One by one, the other competitors performed. Some were better than others, but they all had the same polished, technical approach. They played difficult pieces with impressive skill, but Marcus found himself getting bored listening to them. David Chun, Mrs. Chin's nephew, played a beautiful piece by Debussy. His performance was gentler than the others, more focused on melody and emotion than on showing off. Marcus thought it was the best performance so far. Finally, it was Marcus's turn. His heart was pounding as he walked onto the stage. The lights were brighter than he had expected, and for a moment he could not see the audience clearly. He could hear whispers and murmurs from the crowd. Marcus sat down at the Steinway piano bench. It felt strange after a week of practicing on the hard, uncomfortable bench of the old upright piano. This bench was soft and cushioned, and it was exactly the right height. He placed his fingers on the keys and almost gasped. The keys felt completely different from the broken piano he had been practicing on. These keys responded to the slightest touch. They were perfectly balanced and smooth. After a week of struggling with stuck keys and dead notes, playing this piano felt like flying. Marcus looked out at the audience. He could see Mrs. Rodriguez and Miguel in the back, both smiling encouragingly. Mrs. Chun was in the front row, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Victoria sat with her parents in the middle section, a skeptical expression on her face. Then Marcus noticed something that made his blood run cold. At the side of the stage, barely visible in the shadows, sat the old upright piano that he had been practicing on all week. Someone had wheeled it onto the stage. Principal Morrison walked to the microphone. "Our final performer is Marcus Thompson, playing Chopin Ballade No. 1 in G minor." Marcus looked at the old piano, then at the Steinway. He understood what was happening. They expected him to use the broken piano for his performance, just like he had been forced to use it for practice. It was the final insult, the last attempt to ensure his failure. The audience began to murmur as they noticed the two pianos. Some people looked confused. Others, like Victoria's mother, had small smiles on their faces. Marcus stood up from the Steinway bench. The auditorium went quiet. Everyone was waiting to see what he would do. For a moment, Marcus considered protesting. He could demand to use the same piano as everyone else. He could point out the unfairness of the situation. But then he remembered Miguel's grandmother, who had won her competition by being herself. Instead of trying to be like everyone else, Marcus walked to the old upright piano and sat down on its hard bench. If they wanted him to play on this broken instrument, then that is exactly what he would do. And he would show them that a true musician could make beautiful music on any piano. He placed his hands on the yellowed keys and began to play. The opening notes of the Chopin Ballade filled the auditorium. Even on the old piano, the melody was hauntingly beautiful. Marcus had learned every quirk of this instrument. He knew exactly how to coax the best sound from its worn strings and sticky keys. As he played, something magical happened. The broken piano seemed to come alive under his touch. The stuck keys created unique accents that added character to the music. The out-of-tune notes somehow found harmony with the others. The weak bass notes made the melody stand out even more. Clearly, but most importantly, Marcus played with his whole heart. Every note carried emotion. Every phrase told part of his story. The music spoke of struggle and hope, of loneliness and dreams, of a young man who had overcome every obstacle. To reach this moment, the audience was completely silent. Even the whispers and murmurs had stopped. People sat transfixed, listening to something they had never heard before. This was not just technical skill or impressive tricks. This was music in its purest form, communication between one human soul. And hundreds of others. As Marcus reached the climactic section of the piece, his fingers danced across the keys with passionate intensity. The old piano sang like it had never sung before. Years of neglect and damage seemed to melt away as Marcus brought it back to life. When the final notes faded into silence, the auditorium remained completely quiet for several seconds. Then slowly, applause began. It started with one person, then spread through the crowd like wildfire. Soon the entire audience was on their feet, clapping and cheering. Marcus stood up and took a bow, his heart still racing from the performance. As he looked out at the standing ovation, he saw tears in Mrs. Chun's eyes. Miguel was clapping so hard his hands must have hurt. Even some of Victoria's friends were applauding enthusiastically, but the most surprising reaction came from the judges. All three of them were standing and clapping. The older woman had tears streaming down her cheeks. The man with glasses was shaking his head in amazement. The younger woman was writing furiously in her notebook. Marcus walked off the stage feeling like he was floating on air. He had done it. He had played his heart out and shared his story with the world. Win or lose, he had given everything he had. Now all he could do was wait for the judge's decision. Backstage, Marcus sat on a folding chair and tried to catch his breath. His hands were still shaking from the adrenaline of performing. The other competitors stood around in small groups, talking quietly about the performances they had just heard. Victoria approached him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, Marcus thought she might say something mean about his choice to use the old piano. Instead, she surprised him. That was ... She paused, searching for words. That was not what I expected. What do you mean? Marcus asked. Victoria sat down in the chair next to him. I have been playing piano since I was 4 years old. I have had the best teachers, the best instruments, the best everything, but I have never heard anyone play like that. Marcus did not know what to say. This was the first time Victoria had spoken to him without sarcasm or cruelty in her voice. How did you make that old piano sound so good? Victoria asked. I practiced on it every day for a week, Marcus said. I learned how to work with it instead of fighting against it. Victoria was quiet for a moment. I could never do that. If someone gave me a broken piano, I would demand a better one. I would complain to my parents and have them call the school board. I did not have that choice, Marcus said simply. I know, Victoria said. She looked uncomfortable, like she was realizing something she did not want to face. My mother, she was involved in the decision to move the practice piano. She said it was about fairness, but I think... Victoria stopped talking and looked down at her hands. You think what? Marcus prompted gently. I think she was scared, Victoria admitted. Scared that you might actually be better than me? Before Marcus could respond, Principal Morrison's voice came over the loudspeaker. Will all competitors please return to the stage? The judges are ready to announce their decision. The 10 students filed back onto the stage and stood in a line facing the audience. Marcus found himself between David Chun and a girl named Emily who had played a Beethoven sonata. His heart was beating so fast he was sure everyone could hear. The 3 judges sat at a table in front of the stage. They had been deliberating for 20 minutes, which felt like 20 hours to Marcus. Now they looked ready to share their decision with the crowd. The older woman with silver hair stood up. She had kind eyes and a gentle smile. When she spoke, her voice carried easily through the auditorium. Ladies and gentlemen, students and faculty, thank you for attending the 50th Annual Westfield Academy Piano Competition. The judges have had the difficult task of evaluating 10 truly talented young musicians. She paused and looked along. the line of competitors. Each performer demonstrated skill and dedication that reflects well on this institution. However, one performance stood out as truly exceptional. Marcus felt dizzy. He tried to read the judge's expression, but her face revealed nothing. "Before we announce the winner," the judge continued, "I would like to say something about what we heard today. Most of the performances we judged were technically proficient and musically competent. Several were quite impressive in their complexity and precision." She walked closer to the line of students. "But music is not just about playing the right notes at the right time. Music is about communication. It is about taking the emotions and experiences in your heart and sharing them with others through sound." The judge stopped in front of Marcus. "Today, we heard one performance that transcended technique and became true artistry. We heard a young man take a piece of music and make it his own. We heard him tell his story through Chopin's beautiful melodies." Marcus's knees felt weak. Was she talking about him? "Furthermore," the judge said, turning to address the audience, "we were amazed by this student's ability to create beauty from imperfection. The piano he chose to play was clearly not in optimal condition. Another performer might have seen this as an obstacle, but this young man saw it as an opportunity to demonstrate that music comes from the heart, not from the instrument." A murmur went through the audience. Some people looked confused, while others nodded in understanding. The judge returned to her table and picked up a golden trophy. "The winner of the 50th Annual Westfield Academy Piano Competition and recipient of a full scholarship to the music conservatory of his choice is Marcus Thompson." For a moment, Marcus could not believe what he had heard. The words seemed to echo in his head. Marcus Thompson. Marcus Thompson. Marcus Thompson. Then the audience erupted. People stood up and clapped so loudly that Marcus could feel the sound vibrating in his chest. He saw Mrs. Rodriguez jumping up and down in the back row. Miguel was wiping tears from his eyes. Mrs. Chun was clapping with her hands over her head. Marcus walked forward on unsteady legs to accept the trophy. It was heavier than he had expected, and the gold surface reflected the stage lights like a small sun. "Congratulations, Marcus," the judge said, shaking his hand. "That was one of the most moving performances I have heard in 30 years of judging competitions." "Thank you," Marcus managed to say. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. The second judge, the man with glasses, stood up to address the audience. "I would like to add something," he said. "In all my years evaluating young musicians, I have rarely seen such raw talent combined with such emotional maturity. Marcus played like someone who truly understands what music is for." The third judge, the younger woman, also stood. "What impressed us most was Marcus's choice to embrace the challenge rather than complain about it. When he saw that he would have to perform on a less-than-perfect instrument, he did not make excuses. He found a way to make that instrument sing." She looked directly at Marcus. "That kind of adaptability and creativity will serve you well in your musical career. The best musicians are not those who can only perform under perfect conditions. The best musicians are those who can create magic no matter what obstacles they face." As the judges spoke, Marcus looked out at the audience. Most people were still applauding and smiling, but he noticed that some faces looked uncomfortable or even angry. Victoria's mother sat with her arms crossed and a sour expression. A few other parents whispered angrily to each other, but Marcus did not care about the people who were upset. He cared about the people who were celebrating with him. Mrs. Rodriguez was crying happy tears. Miguel gave him a big thumbs up. Mrs. Chun looked prouder than if he had been her own son. Principal Morrison returned to the microphone. "Congratulations to all our competitors," he said, "and special congratulations to Marcus Thompson, our winner." His voice sounded strained, like he was forcing himself to say the words. Marcus suspected that Principal Morrison had hoped for a different outcome. "The scholarship that Marcus has won will cover full tuition, room and board, and expenses at any accredited music conservatory in the United States," Principal Morrison continued. "This is a tremendous opportunity that we hope Marcus will use wisely." After the formal ceremony ended, people began to leave the auditorium. but many stopped to congratulate Marcus on their way out. Students he had never spoken to came up to shake his hand. Teachers praised his performance. Even some parents who did not know him personally stopped to say kind words. David Chin was the first of his fellow competitors to congratulate him. "That was incredible, Marcus," David said. "I knew you were talented, but I had no idea you could play like that." "Thank you," Marcus said. "Your performance was beautiful, too." "Not like yours," David said with a smile. "You made everyone else sound like we were just going through the motions." One by one, most of the other competitors came to congratulate Marcus. They seemed genuinely happy for him, which surprised Marcus. He had expected them to be jealous or resentful. Victoria was the last to approach him. She looked like she had been crying, but Marcus could not tell if they were tears of sadness or something else. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "For what?" "For everything. For the way I treated you. For the things I said. For ... She hesitated. "For what my mother did with the practice piano?" Marcus looked at her carefully. "You knew about that?" Victoria nodded. "I knew, and I did not stop it. I thought it would give me a better chance to win." She took a shaky breath. "But after hearing you play today, I realized that all the advantages in the world cannot make up for what you have." "What do I have?" Marcus asked. "Soul," Victoria said simply. "You have soul." As the auditorium emptied, Marcus found himself standing alone on the stage with his trophy. He walked over to the old upright piano and sat down on its hard bench one more time. "Thank you," he whispered to the piano. "Thank you for teaching me what I needed to know." The piano did not answer, of course, but somehow Marcus felt like it understood. Mrs. Chun appeared beside him. "How does it feel to be a champion?" she asked. Marcus looked at the trophy in his hands, then at the broken piano that had helped him win it. "It feels like the beginning," he said. "Like everything I have been working for is finally possible." "It is possible," Mrs. Chun said. "All of it. You have proven that talent and determination can overcome any obstacle." Marcus smiled. For the first time in his life, he truly believed that his dreams could come true. He was going to music school. He was going to become a professional musician. And it all started with a broken piano that taught him how to find beauty in imperfection. The competition was over, but Marcus's real journey was just beginning. 3 months after the competition, Marcus sat in his new dorm room at the Eastman School of Music in Rochester, New York. His small room was nothing fancy, but it was his own space. On his desk sat the golden trophy from Westfield Academy, catching the afternoon sunlight that streamed through his window. The past few months had been like a whirlwind. After winning the competition, everything changed for Marcus. Word of his victory spread beyond Westfield Academy. A local newspaper wrote an article about him called "Foster Kid Turns Broken Piano into Golden Opportunity." Then a bigger newspaper picked up the story. Soon, Marcus was getting phone calls from music teachers and talent scouts across the country. But the most important call came from Dr. Sarah Martinez, the admissions director at Eastman. She had heard about Marcus's performance and wanted to offer him additional scholarships beyond the competition prize. "Students like you are exactly what we are looking for," she had told him. "You have not just talent, but character." Now Marcus was actually here studying at one of the best music schools in the world. It still felt like a dream sometimes. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. Marcus opened it to find his roommate Jake holding a letter. "This came for you," Jake said. "Looks important." Marcus took the letter and saw the return address, Westfield Academy. He had not heard from anyone at his old school since graduation. His stomach tightened a little as he opened the envelope. The letter was from Mrs. Chun. "Dear Marcus," it read, "I hope you are settling in well at Eastman. I wanted to update you on some changes here at Westfield since your victory." Marcus sat down on his bed and continued reading. "Your performance at the competition had a bigger impact than you might realize. The video that someone recorded on their phone has been viewed over 2 million times on the internet. People from around the world have been commenting about your story and your music." Marcus smiled. He had seen some of those comments. People called his performance inspiring and heartbreaking and proof that music is universal. Many of the comments came from other young musicians who said his story gave them hope. More importantly, Mrs. Chun's letter continued, your victory has led to some positive changes at our school. The school board voted to invest in better practice facilities for all students, not just the wealthy ones. We now have 3 good pianos and practice rooms that any student can use. This news made Marcus happy. Maybe other students would not have to go through what he had experienced. Victoria has also changed quite a bit since the competition. She asked me to give her more challenging pieces that focus on emotion rather than just technical difficulty. She said she wants to learn to play with soul, as she put it. I think your performance taught her something important about what music really means. Marcus was surprised but pleased to hear this. He had not spoken to Victoria since graduation day, but he was glad to know she was learning and growing. Finally, the letter concluded, I wanted you to know that the old upright piano you practiced on has found a new home. Miguel asked if he could have it, and the school agreed. He is fixing it up for his grandson, who is just starting to learn piano. Miguel said he wants the boy to learn on an instrument with history and character. Marcus laughed out loud at this. He could imagine Miguel telling his grandson about the piano that helped a foster kid win a competition. P.S., Mrs. Chun had added at bottom, I have enclosed something that might interest you. Marcus looked in the envelope and found a newspaper. Clipping, the headline read, Westfield Academy Parents Association elects new leadership. Below that, Marcus read that Mrs. Blackwood, Victoria's mother, had stepped down as president. The new president was quoted saying, we want to ensure that all students, regardless of background, have equal opportunities to succeed, Marcus folded the letter and put it in his desk drawer with other important documents. Then he walked down the hall to the practice rooms. Eastman had dozens of practice rooms, each with a beautiful piano. Marcus could use any of them whenever he wanted. It was like heaven for a young musician. But sometimes he missed the challenge of the old upright piano. That difficult instrument had taught him lessons he could never have learned on a perfect piano. Marcus chose a practice room and sat down at the bench. He began playing the Chopin Ballade that had won him the competition, but now he played it differently than before. His technique was better after months of lessons with college professors. His understanding of the music was deeper, but the heart of the performance was still the same as he played. Marcus thought about how much his life had changed. A year ago, he was just another foster kid trying to survive. Now he was studying at one of the best music schools in the world, preparing for a career as a professional musician, but the most important change was not in his circumstances. It was in how he saw himself. Marcus no longer felt like an outsider, trying to fit in. He had learned that being different was not a weakness, it was a strength. His experiences had given him something unique to offer the world. When he finished playing, Marcus heard applause from the hallway. He opened the door to find several other students listening outside his practice room. Sorry, said a girl with red hair. We did not mean to eavesdrop. But when we heard you playing, we had to stop and listen. That was beautiful. Thank you, Marcus said. Are you the Marcus Thompson? Asked the boy with a violin case. The one from the YouTube video? Marcus nodded, still feeling a little strange about being recognized. That performance was incredible, the girl said. You are kind of famous here, you know. Everyone talks about the kid who won a competition playing on a broken piano. It was not really broken, Marcus said modestly. Just difficult. That makes it even more impressive, the violinist said. We are all classically trained musicians here, but what you did took something extra, something they do not teach in lessons. After the students left, Marcus stayed in the practice room for another hour. He worked on a new piece his teacher had assigned, a challenging sonata by Beethoven. It was much harder than anything he had played before, but Marcus was not intimidated. He had learned that any challenge could be overcome with patience and determination. That evening, Marcus called Mrs. Rodriguez to tell her about his day. She had been like a mother to him during his final months in foster care, and she called him every week to check on how he was doing. "I am so proud of you, Marcus," she said. "Do you remember what I told you on your first day at Westfield?" "You said I earned my place there," Marcus recalled. "That is right. And now you have earned your place at Eastman, too. But more than that, you have earned the right to dream big dreams." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. "I mean you have proven that where you come from does not determine where you can go," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "Your story is going to inspire other kids like you, kids who think their circumstances make their dreams impossible." After hanging up the phone, Marcus walked to his window and looked out at the campus. Students were walking between buildings, carrying instrument cases and music books. Everyone here was pursuing their passion for music, just like him, but Marcus knew his journey was different from most of his classmates. They had grown up with advantages and opportunities that he never had. Their path to Eastman had been smoother and more direct. Marcus's path had been full of obstacles and setbacks, but those challenges had made him stronger and more determined. They had taught him that talent alone was not enough. You also needed perseverance, creativity, and the ability to find opportunity in difficulty. The broken piano at Westfield had been meant to sabotage him, but instead it had prepared him for success. It had forced him to develop skills and insights that he never would have gained on a perfect instrument. As Marcus prepared for bed that night, he thought about his future. He had 4 more years of study ahead of him at Eastman. After that, he hoped to perform with major orchestras and maybe even record albums of his own. But beyond his personal goals, Marcus had a bigger dream. He wanted to start a program to help other disadvantaged kids discover music. He wanted to provide instruments and lessons to foster children and low-income students. He wanted to show them that music could be a path to a better life, just as it had been for him. Marcus picked up his phone and opened the voice memo app. He had an idea for a composition, a piece that would tell the story of his journey from foster care to music school. He hummed a melody that had been floating in his head all day, a theme that represented hope rising from hardship. "Broken piano. Concerto," he said into the phone. "A piece for piano and orchestra, dedicated to everyone who has ever been underestimated." Marcus smiled as he set the phone down. Tomorrow he would start working on the composition. It would be his way of giving back, of transforming his difficult experiences into something beautiful that could inspire others. The competition at Westfield Academy had been just the beginning. Marcus had won much more than a trophy that day. He had won the confidence to pursue his dreams and the knowledge that he could overcome any obstacle. Most importantly, he had learned that sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as challenges. The broken piano that was meant to defeat him had instead become the instrument of his triumph.